How's she going, boys? Mike here. Welcome back to Grampie's workshop. Well, did you see that? Did you see me trying to cut a piece of wood on the bandsaw? Cutting the curve, well, you have to move your wood to cut the curve, but at the end I was trying to cut it nice and straight along that line. And did you see how twisted I had to have the wood to get it even kind of halfway close to being straight? My bandsaw's in bad shape, boys. I've never had good luck with my bandsaw trying to make it cut straight. So what I'm up to today is I'm going to try and do some tuning on my bandsaw to make it cut better. And I'm going to start with making new guide blocks. So I don't know if that's the problem, but I'm trying to diagnose it one thing at a time. So first thing I'm going to do is fix the guide blocks, and we'll go from there. So this probably will be a couple of part series on how to get your bandsaw to cut straight. So let's have a look at how I'm going to go about changing the guide blocks on my bandsaw. So what I'm going to start to do here to make my bandsaw work better is I'm going to check the guide blocks. Now, you just remove the guide blocks by turning those little thumb screws, and then here's what's in it for guide blocks. I made these a long time ago. They're just plastic, and they don't last, well, I can hold my breath longer than these will last, let's just put it that way. They're just plastic. So what I'm going to do is make new guide blocks. 0.52. So a little bit bigger than a ½ inch. So if I cut some guide block material by ½ inch by ½ inch, it should work good. So what am I going to use for guide block material, you ask? Well, that's where keeping scraps comes in handy. There's a pile of scrap up there, but I'm going to pick through that and see if I can find something that I can use. And what I'm going to be going for is like a hardwood material. And I don't know, I tried plastic doesn't work, or the plastic I have doesn't work. When you go on the internet and search for what's a good idea for guide block, they'll say a good hard wood will work, impregnated with like oil or graphite or lubricant or some sort like that, or even roller bearings, ball bearings sometimes work good, although you have to set them up close to be careful not to damage the blade. But I don't have any access to that stuff, so I'm going to make my own out of a piece of hardwood that I found. Wait till I show it to you. So this is the hardwood I'm going to use. This is just a little scrap. It's about 1 inch thick and about 1 1/4 inches wide. I got this out of an old piece of furniture that I tore apart. What it was a hide-a-bed, one of those fold-out hide-a-bed things. And it was quite old, and back then they used hardwood to build things. So I got this piece of hardwood. So I'm going to cut this ½ by ½ and see what we come up with. Alexa, start back. Okay, so we need to fit it in here. A little tight. Wait, now we turn that key out all the way. Yeah. Still a little tight. So I'm just going to rub this on the belt sander a little bit. I'll be right back. Alright, so let's try it. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about, baby. It's a little loose, you know, but by the time you get that in there and it swells up a little bit, maybe swells with moisture, it should be alright. Alright, so before we can set guide blocks, I have to make sure, of course, that the blade is running well. So we'll take these covers off. And what we want to monitor here is that the blade runs in the center of the wheel. The wheel is supposed to be crowned to make it run in the center. There's my blade in the center of the wheel. So it's tracking pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to say that's good. This is a blade guard piece, and it also holds the guide blocks here and here. and there's a backup bearing right here that the blade runs against when you're cutting, and then these guide blocks are supposed to hold the blade straight, as I understand it. Now there's also a set of guide blocks at the bottom, so I'll take this cable off too. Get the insert out. So here's the lower guide blocks down here, and they're made out of plastic too. And as you can see, the guide blocks are supposed to be just barely touching the blade, and I can move that blade 3/16 of an inch either way, I'm sure. So anyway, we're going to take these guide blocks out. Look at the shape of that one. That one doesn't look too bad. At least this is the face that was against the blade. But they don't last, the plastic ones. When you're setting guide blocks, this is my bandsaw blade here. It's an eighth inch one. They suggest that the guide block be placed so that it just comes here at the gullet of the tooth, right along there. So when you adjust the block forward, just adjust it so that it's just at the gullet of the tooth. So there's the gullet of the tooth, right in there, the low point. So this block should be adjusted just about like that. Can you see that? Alright, you don't want it too far forward because then it starts to hit on the cutting edge of the teeth, and each of these teeth have an offset in them. You don't want the teeth touching the guide block, so just set it below that, just so it's running on the flat part of the blade that has no teeth or anything on it. So what I have is the wooden ones we just made. So I made them 2 inches long so I'd have lots of block, but I think I'm going to cut them in half because I only need them 1 inch long. So we're going to put this little guide block right in here, and we're going to put the other guide block right in here. Okay, I loosened these 2 bolts so that I can adjust my blade guide holder back and forth, and I've also let this backup roller bearing come back to give me some room to adjust these, because what I want to do is, like I was saying earlier, adjust these guide blocks so that they're just touching just before the gullet on the teeth of the band. Okay. I also want to make sure that I have this whole assembly centered as best I can, so I'm just going to turn the blade a little, and that seems to be running true there. So I'm going to set this just about like that as far as alignment goes. Then I'm going to tighten these if I can without causing too much trouble. Okay, so that gives me the setup of the blade guide holders. I go online and look for information on this or watch YouTube videos. It says this backup bearing here should be just so a little bit of pressure on your blade will touch the bearing. So that looks pretty good right there to me, because you don't want this bearing turning while the blade is running, but you want, if there's any kind of force comes against it, it'll back up onto the bearing. So that looks good there. Now adjust the guide blocks. So when I see these guide blocks, I'm not sure how good you can see it there, but they're, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch maybe below the gullet of the saw, and they say you should adjust these so that they're just barely touching the blade. Something like that, I think. So I'm hoping that that's not a bad lower guide blade setup. Now we're going to put the tail back on, put the upper blade guide holder in place, and do the upper blade guides. Now I made these, like I was saying, I made these blade guides 2 inches long, so they should fit in here good. I have lots left over. And one thing about on this saw, when you raise and lower the blade guide, watch, when I turn the knob here at the back that holds the shaft that this is mounted on, this shaft right here if you can see it, I get quite a bit of wiggle room here, right? So every time you adjust the height of the blade guide, you have to be careful to make sure you get to your, every time you adjust the height of the blade guard, you have to make sure that you take some time and get the blade guides centered in the holder here again. So once again, I'm going to check these blocks, make sure that they're just in the below the gullet of the tooth, and then just so that they're touching on the blade. And then we have to make sure that this roller bearing doesn't turn, and it doesn't, but it's just about in contact. So that's set up pretty good right there, I'd say, and it doesn't sound too bad. Okay, we're set up again. I never know about the tension, if the tension's right on the blade or not. I'm not real good at determining the proper tension, and maybe that's why it's not cutting straight. But anyway, I have a line drawn on this little piece of softwood, and I'm just going to try and run that through there now, see how it cuts. So I'm going to have to say that that cut 100 times better, but I still had to twist my wood around to the left here as I was going through it. You saw that probably. Now that, I'm not sure. I'm going to do a lot of research here to try to find out how I can tune up my bandsaw to make it cut better. But certainly the guide blocks made an improvement because it did cut a lot straighter. But I'm thinking that it could be a bad blade. There could be a twist in the blade. Could be dull. Could not be the right tension. Could be the wheels are out of a line. I don't know. But anyway, that's the first try. So we're trying to get this bandsaw to cut straight. It's working a little bit better now after changing the guide blocks, but it's still, you know, I've seen videos on YouTube where guys make their own bandsaws and they cut just as straight as if you cut it on a table saw. So I've got some work to do yet on this one. So that's what we're going to be up. We're going to continue this investigation and adventure to try to make my bandsaw cut straight. So you're welcome to join us. There'll be more episodes coming up. In the meantime, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for dropping by the channel. I hope you enjoy it. And if it's your first time here, how's you going? Welcome, and I'm glad you're here. I hope you come back often. In the meantime, everyone, stay safe, stay healthy. Don't forget, COVID is still around the corner. I'm going to talk to you.